Good afternoon, producer Susan. How has your day been?
It's good, Jersey Joe. How's yours?
Good. Actually, I should say, how's your week been?
Long. We did a giant dance marathon and raised $17.7 million this last weekend.
From a dance marathon at Penn State.
Yep.
Wow,
Thought.
how many people participated?
Well, there's about 700 and something dancers, but it takes thousands of people to put on the event.
Wow. And where do the bulk of the donations come from? Alumni or businesses or what?
Everybody, dancer families, a lot of corporate dancers, in-kind donations. Yeah, $17.7 million.
Well, fantastic. And where does that money go? What do they use it for?
It goes to the Four Diamonds Fund, which is a part of Hershey Medical Center down in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So any child who lives in the state of Pennsylvania who's a patient there who has cancer, their family does not receive a single medical bill. And a lot of these bills would not be covered by insurance because a lot of the treatment is experimental treatment. And,
Uh-huh.
the healthcare system is broken and
Sure.
insurance doesn't pay for these things, but the families, their meals, their lodging, their travel, their medical bills is all covered by this $17.7 million fund.
Well, fantastic. And that's kind of like St. Jude's then, right? St. Jude's Children's
Yeah, it's
Hospital.
kind of like St. Jude's, yeah. But it's specific to children, to families who live in the state of Pennsylvania.
Well, fantastic. All right. All right. You want to hear what we're going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
Well, surprisingly, Trump's been in office 5 weeks, and guess what? There's still a lot to talk about. It is not, there's this thing is not losing any velocity in terms of the changes that are being happened. Have you had a chance to watch any of the news
I
programs?
I did not yet today.
Well, we're going to tell you there's still a whole bunch of stuff going on. Um, our quote of the week is from a guy named Fyodor Dostoevsky. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Not at all.
A Russian novelist died 150 years ago. So we our quote of the week is from the Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky. And like most of our quotes, they are over 100 years old. They're truer today than they were 100 years ago. And the stupidest thing I've heard all week will tell you what the Santa Clara School District in California spent more than $350,000 on. Hint, it wasn't for more teachers, better teacher pay, or improved school security. I shook my head when I heard this. You know who Kevin O'Leary is, right? Mr.
Yep.
Wonderful?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we have a quote from him on his opinion of the speed and depth of Trump's employee cuts, and I think it's very interesting. So we'll play that. Um, by the way, a little side note here. I was on the radio in Denver last night, KLZ 560,
I was listening to you, Jersey Joe.
and they've asked me to come back and talk some more tonight. So after we
Great.
record this podcast, I'll be on KLZ 560 tonight from 5 to 6 Mountain Time and from 7 to 8 Eastern Time. If anybody,
Great.
and you can always catch the podcast of that show. It's KLZ 560, and the show is Rush to Reason. So
Good
if
show.
you
Good show.
if you missed it last night and you want to catch it, just look for the podcast. It takes about 2 days to get their podcast up. All right. Um, we're going to tell you how the Biden administration funneled $2 billion in government grant money to failed Georgia governor candidate Stacy Abrams and what she did with the money. We'll tell you about large-scale private sector layoffs that were announced in the past week and ask why the media only seems to be concerned when those being laid off are government employees. When they do it, they're government employees, they're all concerned and they got these human interest stories, but nobody seems to give a damn. Like when Jeff Bezos lays off 1,400 people. We'll give you some detail on that. You remember who our former vice president was?
It was Kamala Harris.
We're going to play a clip of her giving a little speech, and the question is, was she sober when she gave this speech? You'll have to tell us. You've heard me rant about the California bullet train boondoggle that's been going on for a decade or more now.
Yes.
Well, finally, this week, hopefully, we have heard the long overdue death of that project, which has been nothing but just sucking up taxpayer funds. We'll also tell you what country that holds nearly 2 trillion of U.S. national debt was also receiving foreign aid payments from U.S. taxpayers. That's pretty stupid. Um, and our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Kentucky, where a 14-year-old boy who was home alone shoots and kills two, not one, but two armed intruders. One 14-year-old against two armed intruders. They both wind up DRT, dead right there. All right. Think we can fit all that in?
Sounds like an awful lot to get through.
All right, here we go. So this is a Russian novelist. Fyodor Dostoevsky, he died in 1850. Uh, Fyodor Dostoevsky, he wrote a great bunch of great novels. He was also a journalist. And think of how true this is today compared to when he wrote it in 1850. And again, this is translated from the Russian. He said, tolerance will reach such a level that intelligent people will be banned from thinking so as not to offend the imbeciles. Think about that. Remember, all these people, all the intelligent people were getting shut down and shouted down for saying, well, whether it be their opinions on transgender or the they them pronouns and whatnot, and you have to show tolerance to all these transgender athletes and whatnot. If you didn't, you're a Nazi.
Yeah.
So again, so we said 150 years ago, tolerance will reach such a level that intelligent people will be banned from thinking so as not to offend the imbeciles. I just think that was so prophetic. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you observed any of that? Uh, People being chastised for not being tolerant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you get ostracized.
Mhm.
If you don't embrace, whatever it is, if you don't embrace LGBTQ or sex change operations for kids, or you don't love and open your doors to all the illegal immigrants, you're intolerant and you're a Nazi.
Yeah,
So
we're not allowed to have our own opinions that differ from anybody else's
that's
opinions.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So diversity doesn't apply to opinions. All right. Stupidest thing we've heard all week. Now, we all remember COVID in 2020, right?
Yep.
And the Democrats sponsored three COVID relief bills that totaled $5.7 billion. Do you remember getting your $1,400 stimulus check?
I do, yes, actually.
All right. And people who got laid off, in addition to their state unemployment, they got an additional $300 a week
Mhm.
for 6 months on top of that, which, by the way, resulted in some of those people earning more money while they were unemployed than they were while they were working. I don't know if you knew.
Yeah, a friend of mine who has three children, they got $300 per child.
Right.
He was laid off from his job. And so they got an additional $900 each month.
Right. And then per week, if you were, so say you were working, by the way, in most states you get unemployment is 50%. So if you were working for uh 15 bucks an hour, if let's say you were working for 300 bucks, or let's say you're working for 400 bucks a week,
Mhm.
you got a $200 check from state unemployment, and then the federal government comes along and gives you an extra three. So
Mhm.
you're getting 200 from the state and 300 from the federal government. You were getting $500 a week while you were laid off versus $400 a week if you were working.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how stupid it was. Anyway, they were also doling out money to states and cities and counties, to buy, laptops for their students. Remember they were doing all this remote learning and
Yeah.
stuff, and they were. So here's the stupidest thing I've heard all week. So the Santa Clara County School District, they got a COVID grant. COVID, these are COVID relief dollars. You know what they spent? Well, you probably do because you heard me on the radio last night. They took $353,000 of their COVID relief funds and they used it to rent out the Los Angeles Angels baseball stadium for their high school graduation ceremony. $353,000 to rent out the Los Angeles Angels uh, baseball stadium. Now, you ever seen a picture of the Hollywood Bowl, that big open air
Yeah.
amphitheater with the,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a historic landmark.
right. It's a Hollywood Bowl. They could have rented the Hollywood Bowl for $20,000. But no, they had to rent the Santa Clara, I mean, they had to rent the LA Angels baseball stadium for $350,000. Now, they could have used the money for hire more teachers, hire some school security, give their teachers a raise, but no, they had to use it to rent out the LA Angels baseball stadium. Have you heard anything stupider than that this week?
I'm sure that there probably are some stupider, wasteful spending out there, but yeah, that's
I
definitely
mean,
up there.
I haven't heard anything more stupid than that this week. Have you?
Not this week.
All right. All right. You want to hear what Kevin O'Leary has to say about Trump's uh, employee layoff? You have any
Yeah,
interest in?
yeah, what did Kevin O'Leary have to say?
Here we go. See if I can catch this. he's on a roundtable. This is on CNN. He's one of six people on a roundtable discussion. Here we go.
I think the issue is they're not whacking enough. There's this concept of
They're not whacking enough. That's the first words out of his mouth. Hang on, let me turn the volume up. Let me back this up just 5 seconds.
optics of this is
No,
what
no,
you're referring to.
I think the issue is they're not whacking enough. There's this concept in private equity, when you get a bankrupt company and you go in there, you cut 20% more than your initial read. And then you find, like a pool of mercury, the organization gels back together again. Always cut deeper, harder when there's fat and waste. The FAA, it's not the people. The code is cobalt. It's from the 60s.
He's talking about COBOL, the programming language. It's a 65-year-old obsolete program. All the FAA computers are running on COBOL, a 65-year-old obsolete programming language.
It needs CapEx put into it.
And CapEx is capital expenditures to upgrade systems. So this may seem counterintuitive. Spending money is not saving money, but if the systems you're working with are so antiquated, you have to use humans to offset and to compensate for the failures of your 65-year-old systems. What you save in labor will more than offset your investment in new computers and new software. So that's what he talks about CapEx. He's talking about capital investment, capital expense. I'm going to back it up.
Cut deeper, harder when there's fat and waste. The FAA, it's not the people. The code is cobalt. It's from the 60s. It needs CapEx put into it for the technology to be upgraded to make it safer. Fat like a chicken. All of these agencies are like big fat chickens dripping over barbecues of fat. This is the best barbecue I've ever seen, but I don't think it's happening fast enough. They're not cutting enough. Keep slashing, keep hacking while you have a 24-month mandate before the midterms. Cut, more cutting. Believe me, it's going to work out just great. Everybody
Even
should be
people with
happy
the
about
nuclear
this.
codes,
All right, we can keep playing a little more.
cut them too.
Cut everything, because if you don't see what they're doing and they can't show you that they're adding value, you whack.
But
It's
it's
clear
clear.
that
Go
they're
ahead.
even at
Now it gets into a big debate, but what do you think of what Kevin O'Leary, what do you think about his approach?
Yeah, certainly interesting.
Right. And he talked about the pool of mercury. Like, if you ever had a pool of mercury on the table and you divide it with a knife, and the
Mhm.
pieces will come back together and reform very quickly into a
Yeah,
whole.
they don't stay apart very easily.
They don't stay apart. So that's what he's talking about, pool of mercury. And by the way, I have to agree with, one of our quotes we did, I think 6 months ago, was from the late Milton Friedman, the economist. He said, I don't know if you remember this. He said, the problem, he said, is that too many government programs are judged by their intentions rather than their results. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that quote by Kevin O'Leary?
Yeah, I vaguely do. Yes.
So, and it's true today. We have all these great programs that have great intentions, but operationally they're failures. They don't accomplish even a fraction of what they were set out to do. And that's what I think we're looking at today, is that we have, by the way, there's over 200 poverty programs. Federal government is involved in over 200 poverty programs.
I believe it.
And many of them there's a saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so many of these programs have great intentions, but they don't deliver on the intentions. So I think that's what Kevin O'Leary is talking about in terms of not producing. Now let's move on to all the hoopla over a Doge employee. Musk had a bunch of MIT grads, and one of them was assigned to, look at the IRS data systems and how they're processing stuff. And the left went ballistic, including people like Chuck Schumer and AOC. How again, these people have been vetted. They don't have security clearance. How dare they let this person look at your tax data? They can see your social security number. Well, they didn't seem to have a canary. Turns out that during the Biden administration allowed 991 people who were not IRS employees to view that same data. And of those 991, 226 weren't even government employees. They were independent contractors.
Yeah.
So you had 991 people, including 226 outside contractors, were given access to view that exact same data. Nobody seemed to give a crap when it was happening under Biden, but you let one Doge employee see it, and the sky is falling. I mean, were you were you aware that the Biden administration had given 991 people to access to the data?
No, I didn't realize that, but I'm not surprised.
And by the way, you know the difference with any data system. There's different levels of access. You can give somebody what's called read-only access. In other words,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can read data, you can view the data, but you can't edit it, delete it, modify it. And
Mhm.
these people, well, this Doge employee, all he has is read-only access. He can't change anything. He can't delete your file. He can't edit your file. He can't add anything. He's got read-only access. So, but God forbid one Doge employee um, had access to can see your social security number, and the sky is falling. Biden 900 people, nobody cares. And here's a quote from the report. As of September 2023, 1,173 users, including 755 IRS employees, 291 contractors, and 74 other federal employees, and 53 unpaid hires. These were college researchers and student volunteers. There were 254 users who had access to unmasked data and 919 users who had access, I'm sorry, 254 had access to masked data and 919 had access to unmasked data. Yet nobody seemed to care when Biden was doing it. Now, should we move on to Stacy Abrams?
Yeah. Why do I know that name?
She was the gubernatorial candidate in Georgia.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Big,
Yes.
heavy-set black woman
Yeah.
with a gap in
Yeah.
her front teeth. She looks
Yeah.
like what's the guy's Michael Strahan with a gap in his front teeth?
Yes.
Okay. Well, she lost the Georgia gubernatorial race, and she's anti-Trump and whatnot.
Mhm.
Turns out in 2023, after she lost the Georgia governor's race, she started a nonprofit, and she started with $100. Well, it turns out that the Biden administration decided to give her newly formed nonprofit, not just the Biden, but the EPA, which is part of the Biden, decided to give the EPA awarded her a $2 billion, that's billion with a B, grant to study and address climate change. Now, Stacey Abrams has no background. She's not a scientist. She's a liberal arts major. This newly formed, I mean, brand new, the ink wasn't even dry in the paper. Brand new, had no credentials in the area of climate change or earth science. You've got a background in earth science, right?
I do. Yes.
Well, so she and her quote, I say organization, they had $100 in a bank account. And all of a sudden, the EPA says, here's $2 billion, go fight climate change. And of course, the first thing Stacey Abrams does as the head of this newly formed organization is to give herself a $400,000 salary.
Yeah.
Now,
No.
tell me there's no payback going on here.
Yeah. There needs to be oversight on that for sure.
And by the way, and that 2 billion came from, and it turns out the Biden administration, that 2 billion came from a $20 billion fund that the Biden administration illegally parked in a commercial bank account. Normally, all payments by the federal government are paid for by a check issued by the U.S. Treasury.
Yeah.
We all know this, right?
Yeah. We talked about it last week, I believe.
Right. Well, the Biden administration had the EPA take $20 billion and put it in a Citibank checking account where it was shielded from any sort of oversight and audit. And that $2 billion was given to Stacey Abrams' newly formed nonprofit from that Citibank checking account. So nobody could see so there was if anybody was auditing the Treasury Department, there was no record at the Treasury Department that money had gone to Stacey Abrams' uh, newly found nonprofit, which
Sounds
had
like a little bit of like creative money laundering.
that's exactly what it was. And again, she and her organization have absolutely zero experience in climate change, none whatsoever. So that's where we were with that. All right, how much time we got?
Oh, you about 15 minutes.
All right, private sector layoffs. So I know if you've watched the news, the news is just tripping all over themselves. They're doing interviews with recently, oh, well, my baby, we got a new baby, my wife is pregnant. They're doing all these human interest stories with government employees, how they're being impacted by these layoffs. Well, last week, Jeff Bezos, he has a company that's competing with Elon Musk to SpaceX to launch satellites into orbit for the government. Well, his company Blue Origins laid off 1,400 people from Blue Origins, and
Didn't hear that.
Starbucks announced they're laying off 1,000 people at the corporate level. These are not baristas; these are corporate level employees. Media doesn't seem to care when the private sector lays off thousands of people, but God forbid the federal government does it, and it's a top story, human interest story. Did you hear any big news about Jeff Bezos laying off 1,400
Did
people?
not. Nor did I hear about Starbucks either.
Yep. So the media doesn't care when it's the private sector. It's only when federal government. All right. All right. Here's a question. Here's a quick speech from Kamala Harris last week. And I don't even know what she's trying to say, but my big question um, is she sober? You tell me. And if you could see her face, and if you can put this clip up on the website, you'll look at her face and her hand movement. I literally think,
We see things that are being taken,
hang on, here we go.
see things that are being taken. But also let's see it as, nature abhors a vacuum. So where there's a vacancy, then let's fill it. Yeah. Right? And let's know that the reality is that the progress of our nation has always been about the expansion of rights, not the restriction of rights. We're saying.
By the way, listen to all the people. She's surrounded by people, her admirers, and everything she says. Oh, well, they're all nodding, and that's. I'm going to back this up a little. Listen to all the people standing around her, nodding, and yes, affirming what she's saying is great, great stuff. Here we go.
The vacancy, then let's fill it. Yeah. Right? And let's know that the reality is that the progress of our nation has always been about the expansion of rights, not the restriction of rights. We're seeing a U-turn right now, but we have to keep fighting for those rights to be maintained, which means we have to be vigilant, and it's just the nature of it. And it doesn't mean we don't see the beauty in everything, right? These things all coexist. But I believe we fight for something, not against it. And that's our optimism, right? We see things like.
You have to watch her facial expressions and her
Yeah,
hand movements.
I have to watch this video because I haven't seen this video.
I swear, as you watch her hand movements and like she's leaning back and her head is rolling back and forth, her head is going from side to side and her hands are just flopping around. I swear to you, this woman's drunk or she's high on Xanax or something. You have to watch this video, and if you can post it on the website.
She is unemployed, so day drinking. What's wrong with a little day drinking if you're not?
If you're going to day drink, don't go out and give a speech in front of a group of people. And the people around her are, they're all mumbling and egging her on. What she's saying is almost unintelligible. So that was Kamala Harris. All right.
He's been hanging out with Joe again, post-retirement.
Yeah. All right. Now, one of my favorite, we've talked here extensively in the past about the California Bullet Train project that was started in 2008 and was supposed to be finished in 2012. It was going to be a straight shot from LA to San Francisco. And it was going to cost $11 billion. The last time we talked about it, the estimate had gone from 11 billion to 123 billion, and the new completion date was the year 2100. 2100. Oh, and it no longer goes from LA to San Francisco. It goes out through the hinterlands of California, through Fresno and all these other places. And because there was only 40 miles between stops, the train, which theoretically could go 150 miles an hour, could never get up to that speed because by the time you got up to 150 miles an hour, it was time to start braking for the next stop. So what was supposed to be a 90-minute trip from San Francisco to LA or vice versa was going to be a 4-hour trip through the backcountry of Pennsylvania. And by the way, virtually no track has been laid. They've built a few bridges, railroad trestles over some creeks and rivers and some track there, but there's literally no track. Now they have spent, I think, $16 billion of taxpayer money in the past. Let's see, 2008 to 12. So they've been at this for 17 years. They've been spending $1 billion a year, and there's really no track to speak of to be laid.
Meanwhile, do you know how much if you wanted to fly from, I don't think that people realize how far apart LA and San Francisco are. It's about 400 miles.
Last time I checked was like $150 round trip.
I just Googled it. It is $91 to fly, and it's 90 minutes.
One way or round trip?
That is round trip. You can go one way for $47, or you can go round trip for 91.
And it's what, 1 hour?
It's 90 minutes.
90 minutes. And that includes boarding the plane and taxi, right?
Yep.
So if you had a
Now,
choice,
it doesn't include going through TSA,
okay.
but it is a 90-minute flight.
But if you had a choice between, so say you were in one of those cities and wanted to go to the other, and you could spend 4 hours on a train or 90 minutes on or 90 minutes on a plane, which would you do?
Yeah, 90 minutes. Yeah, I think they completely lost sight of the purpose of what this train was supposed to accomplish.
Right. Well, thank God it's finally dead because Trump has pulled the federal funding. Now, can California go ahead with this project if they want to fund 100% of it on their own? Yes, but I think even Gavin Newsom had come to realize that this thing was a boondoggle and needed to die, but he didn't want to take the political heat for killing it. So now this has given him the perfect out. He can now say, well, we have to kill the project because Trump cut off the funding. Gavin Newsom had to know this thing was a massive boondoggle that was going to sink, was going to sink the taxpayers of California and maybe even sink him. I think he was desperate for a way out. So he actually owes Trump a big favor because now Trump has given him an excuse to kill the project. So
yeah. 90 minutes.
90 minutes, right.
And only 90 minutes and only $90.
Right. And by the way, and 2008 to the year 2100 is 92 years. 92 years to complete what was supposed to be 350 miles of train track.
Yeah.
92 years to
Hop
complete.
on a plane.
Hop on a plane.
Delta, Alaskan, Hawaiian, United, Frontier, American, and Southwest. 90 minutes, $90.
Round trip, $45
Round trips, yep.
$45 each way. All right. By the way, when I last night did the math, given the cost and they're borrowing, a lot of this money is being both their own money, which is bond money, which they have to pay interest on, and the federal money, which of course we're financing with borrowed debt, with treasury bonds. I looked at the track maintenance cost, the operating cost, and the interest on the debt. The last time I looked at this, the California would have been better off buying everybody a free airline ticket. Anybody want to go back and forth between those two cities, they would have saved $10 billion a year just by giving away airline tickets. That's how much it would have, the combination of the operating cost and the interest on all the borrowed money would have dwarfed the cost of just giving people free airline tickets. Yeah. So thank God, put a stake in it and just like a vampire, put a stake in it and hope it never comes back to life. All right. We all know who Senator Rand Paul is, right?
Yep.
All right. Now, when we borrow money, we do it by issuing treasury bonds. And believe it or not, a lot of foreign governments, when they have excess cash, they invest their excess cash in U.S. treasury bonds. Do you know what big country owns $2 trillion of U.S. treasury bonds, interest-bearing U.S. treasury bonds?
China?
China.
Oh,
China
yes.
owns $2 billion of U.S. treasury bonds. Guess what Senator Rand Paul discovered when he was checking where we were spending our foreign aid dollars? We were sending foreign aid dollars, U.S. taxpayer dollars, we were sending to foreign aid in China, USAID. So here's his quote. So our government is so dumb, it is literally borrowing money from China to give it back to China while paying interest on it. So we borrow the money from China and say, oh, let us give you some of the money back in the form of foreign aid. And we're going to keep paying interest on the money that we borrowed from you. That could have been our stupidest thing I've heard all week.
I mean, and China is a very wealthy country.
Yes.
They are not. Now, because they are a communist country, their human rights are atrocious, but they are a very rich country, and they could help their own people if they chose to. They just choose not to.
And if they weren't a wealthy country, they wouldn't have the money to buy $2 trillion of U.S. Treasury bonds, right?
Exactly.
So that's how wealthy they are. All right, how much time we got?
You have about 5 minutes.
All right, we're going to do taxpayer relief shots. And for those who are not familiar with a taxpayer relief shot, here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, to tell you what a taxpayer relief shot is.
somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save taxpayers money.
Did you want to hear your Sheriff Grady
Or
Judd?
we have a minute extra for that? Sure.
All right.
But we have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
I love to blow you back out of their house with the guns. I know you like to shoot him so it looks like grated cheese one, but
Yep.
all right. So this one comes to us from Kentucky. 14-year-old boy home alone and two home invaders break into the house. So here we go. All right.
State troopers are investigating a deadly home invasion.
KSB says the two who died were not victims, and the shooter was younger than 18. Destiny Quinn is at the alert desk to explain.
Victor and Mariah, when two men broke into a home with plans to steal firearms from a safe, they were met by an armed juvenile. At around 4:30 Saturday, the Manchester Police Department responded to a house in the city of Manchester. There they determined that two men had forced their way into the house. The juvenile resident of the home found the intruders holding firearms and allegedly acted in self-defense, shooting the two men before escaping through a bedroom window. The two men were later identified as Roger Smith of McKee and Jeffrey Allen of Manchester. Both have since died. This is a developing story as the investigation is ongoing. WKYT will continue following it and bring you the latest. From the alert desk, I'm Destiny Quinn.
Imagine you're 14. Oh, hang on. 14.
What state was that in? Manchester, which state?
That was Kentucky.
Kentucky. Okay. So
Yes.
I'm guessing, so Kentucky is not a very populous state, a lot of rural areas.
Yep.
So good for that boy. I'm
Yeah.
good for the parents for teaching the boy
How to use a gun, and and again, he shot the two guys and didn't know if they were dead or alive. Then he escaped. He jumped out the bedroom window to get away from the house.
That's probably, I don't know where Manchester, Kentucky is, but I'm going to guess it's probably one of those rural areas where they probably don't have the local police department. They probably have like a county sheriff.
Yeah, county sheriff. Yeah, probably be 15, 20 minutes before they could get there.
Yeah, so good for the parents for teaching the child how to defend. And
Right.
we certainly don't advocate children having guns, but in those rural areas, they use guns for hunting. That's a way.
When I was 13 years old, I was hunting woodchucks on my grandparents' ranch in
Yeah.
the summer. So, all right. Hey, I know we're running short of time. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, so we were talking about some layoffs. So not direct layoffs, but if you can read between the lines, Penn State did announce today that they're looking to close probably 12 or so of their Commonwealth campuses.
Really? Around the state? How many campuses do they have?
If you include the special mission campuses, we have about 24 campuses across the state.
So now, obviously, they're not going to close the big one in State College, but they've
No,
got
no.
a lot of smaller satellite campuses. Is Altoona on the list?
No, I believe that Altoona is one of the safe campuses.
Okay.
The bigger ones like Abington, which is down in
Philadelphia area.
yeah. Altoona, Barron's, which is up in Erie. Those are probably going to be safe, but yeah, they're looking at some of the 12 potential smaller campuses, and that's going to have a huge economic impact on some of the
On
areas.
those towns, yeah. A lot of those towns I know probably get a lot of the businesses in those towns probably get a lot of money from the students who attend those colleges.
Yeah.
It's always sad, but it's necessary. All right. Now, I know we're running short on time, so I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things that I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found them as interesting, important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to the podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, including that video of Kamala Harris that I swear she's drunk, in a day or two, you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jerzee being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee, jerzeejoe.com, no space, no hyphen. If you want to send me an email with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, You can do that by sending me an email to simply joe@jerzee joe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey, Jerzee. And with that, Producer Susan, and unless there's something else you want to add, we'll sign off and talk again next week. You good?
All right, we're good.
All right, talk to you next week. Bye-bye.